This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Work for Yourself at 50 Plus. My name is Eleanor Chatterton. I'm a librarian at the St. Louis Public Library, and it is my pleasure to present our presenter tonight, Amina Abdul-Malik, who is a counselor with the Small Business Empowerment Center. And I will just transfer it over to her.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Eleanor. It's always great to be back facilitating an event with the St. Louis Public Library, one of my favorite partners, and not only because they always treat me so well every time I get a chance to interact with them, but also because of the wealth of resources that they have available and accessible for potential entrepreneurs like yourselves right now. So thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Amina Abdul-Malik, and I'm a counselor for the Small Business Empowerment Center here in St. Louis. And we are a organization that provides technical support and assistance and resource connections and training opportunities such as this one for entrepreneurs who are looking to start or grow their existing small businesses here locally in St. Louis. And I'm very excited to be able to share more information about AARP Foundation's Work for Yourself at 50 Plus program. Before we get started, I'd like to kind of, jump into a little bit of introductions. We'll keep them very brief so that we can kind of dive into the presentation, which is going to really walk us through a step-by-step look at what it takes and what decisions go into starting a small business as an encore entrepreneur. But before I allow you all to kind of introduce yourselves, first of all, I'm very, very informal, so please feel free if you have questions at the end of the slide to raise your hand, to type your questions in the chat, or come off of mute if you have questions, comments, or see something or read something that really resonates with you. Feel free to turn your cameras on. And just a little bit of information as we start about AARP Foundation. How many people are already familiar with the foundation arm of AARP? Now, I know that many of us are probably familiar with AARP and some of those traditional AARP services, but how many of us have heard of the AARP Foundation? I see Carlotta, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, you have a thumbs up. So you've heard of AARP Foundation, and they are the philanthropic arm of AARP that really serves vulnerable people that are 50 plus and try to create and advance various solutions that really help encore entrepreneurs and adults over 50 that have all of that wonderful real life experience that I like to learn from all the time, to explore your different options when it comes to self-employment or looking for work or just empowering yourself and your finances. So AARP Foundation actually has a bunch of different programs that are wrapped into supporting adults over 50. And so as a follow-up to the class, I would love to set up time to talk more about the various AARP Foundation services and obviously more about your small business ideas as well. I also work for, and I'm a counselor for the Small Business Empowerment Center, which you don't see on the slide here, but they're also the facilitators of this class in partnership with AARP Foundation. And we are a place-based organization providing support for entrepreneurs here in St. Louis. And I see in the chat also, Karen, you have heard of AARP Foundation. And Angie, I see you're not familiar, so you'll definitely be more familiar after the presentation today. Also, one thing I'll mention before we dive into what to expect today and really quickly go through some quick introductions, I want to also share that there is a physical toolkit that comes as a component to this workshop. And within the toolkit, there will be a bunch of additional supplementary or additional information to help you along the way of your entrepreneurship journey. And it could kind of go, the toolkit goes right along with the presentation. So I may even make some references to the toolkit this evening. Unfortunately, AARP Foundation is having a little bit of a shortage on a national level on printing physical toolkits. So I will have to connect with you all individually, which I know Eleanor usually will provide contact information so that I can reach out to you all, connect with you all to make sure I get you all those physical copies mailed out from AARP Foundation of your physical toolkits as well. And those, there will be exercises in there and a bunch of different tools and resources to kind of help you take what you learn from the presentation today and actually put it into action for your potential business. So today we are going to dive right into a 5-step process to evaluate or make the decision or the 5 simple steps that it really will take to get you started on your entrepreneur or self-employment path. And so we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of the content that's in the workshop, engage in a few group discussions, and really kind of dive into exploring your options, really understanding how to find your focus for a potential business idea, how to make a plan, what to watch out for, some of the distinct challenges that entrepreneurs typically face, and then finally wrapping it up by talking more about how to find support and take action. So I want to go ahead and give you all the opportunity to introduce yourself. If you want to answer one of the questions that you see on the slide, we can start. I see Carlotta, or you can let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Carlotta. I see that you gave me a thumbs up on my question earlier, so I love to start by just learning your name and if you would like to answer one of the questions you see on the slide.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. One of the questions. Well, I'm gonna start with the third one. What I'm hoping to get from the workshop is basically some tips on getting started. I'm recently retired, and I do have some skills, talents, perhaps even and some hobbies that I would like to turn into a business or into some way that I can actually make money from it.
Great, and this is a great place to be to get kind of some of those best practices tips. And then I think the best thing about this program too, Carlotta, is this is just step one. So the Small Business Empowerment Center does offer some counseling services as well. So we can chat even as a follow-up to the class. And I can learn even more about your business, what some of your needs are, your goals, and talk more about the resources and what it takes to put those things together as well. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Miss Daisy? I think you still may be on mute, Miss Daisy.
I'm sorry. I'm Daisy. I'm in
Go ahead.
Virginia, and I'm not currently working for myself, but it is a goal I have. So that's why I'm here.
Great. And you have all that real life wisdom and knowledge and experience. And so a lot of times there's a business within those skills and experience when you're able to put the right structure in place. So thanks for joining. Jessie?
Okay. Thank you.
And no problem, no pressure if you aren't available to come off of mute. You can. Thank you, Karen. I see you putting your introduction in the chat. Feel free to throw your introduction in the chat as well. Karen, thank you so much for joining. You're from Minnesota, disabled, have several years that you were employed or wanting to work for yourself is a goal after 20. Gotcha. And thank you so much for joining, Karen. April, if you wanted to share and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm April, and I'll answer question number 1. No, I'm not currently working for myself, but I'm considering it. So looking forward to the session. Thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for joining, April. And I see Paula, thank you for your curiosity. I think entrepreneurship starts with a little bit of curiosity about how you can use your skills and translate that into making more money for yourself oftentimes. And so I think that you all will be left with a bunch of next steps, a bunch of things and trigger questions for you to consider these options a little bit more as well. And then I don't want to miss anyone here, but I also want to make sure we have enough time to get through the presentation. So if everyone else could maybe just throw their introductions into the chat for me, that would be great. And I'll try to read some of those as we kind of go through and kick off with step one. And step one, really, as we are making considerations and thinking about self-employment, it starts off with exploring your options and really starting to think through and evaluate what your interests are. And before you can decide how to structure your entrepreneurship journey, especially for those who are just still in the curiosity phase, or haven't even made that determination if self-employment may be right for you, there are a few different things that you want to consider before jumping into your entrepreneurship journey. And we're going to walk through those things together in step one here. And after step one, you should feel a lot more comfortable about understanding or making that decision if self-employment is right for you, best suited for your personal life and your professional goals as well. Thank you, Kevin, for also joining my co-facilitator here in the chat. Please, he has just left the link, and I'll also give a reminder of this at the conclusion of class, and also in a follow-up email I'll send to you all. But if you would like to take advantage of the Small Business Empowerment Center's counseling services, he has posted the link for you all to directly register and get signed up so we can keep these conversations going. But I'll make sure that I provide you all that link as well in a separate email. So what does it really mean to be self-employed? And anyone who, if we think about all of the times where we may have did a task or sewed a pocket up for a family member or done a friend's hair or done someone's makeup informally, all of those things are examples of self-employment. And really, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, more and more Americans that are over the age of 50 plus are starting their own businesses or working for themselves. So in fact, there's an interesting stat that states that over 26% of all businesses that start in this country are actually run by adults that are in between 55 and 65. And that percentage is continuing to go up. So what does it really mean to work for yourself? Anyone who is really generating your own income directly from one customer or a group of customer or clients or other organizations or businesses is working for themselves rather than being an employee of a business. That's what is really considered self-employment. So there are many different types of self-employment, and we're going to talk about a few of these different types here shortly. But being self-employed includes people who are sole proprietors or individuals who are owning and managing their own company, even temporary or contract workers. If you ever have received a 1099 as the result of doing freelance work, you are or have been self-employed. So there is a very, very wide range of self-employment possibilities. And so it's really best to start off by evaluating where there may be a fit or where there may be gaps and what option is going to make the most sense for your idea. Thank you so much for your intro, Barbara, and thanks for joining. Your husband also, Daryl, thank you for joining as well. And I see you also work full-time right now, which is actually a great time to be making the consideration of starting your own business. And because there are some distinct risks and challenges that come from going from being employed to being self-employed. But it is, I think, sometimes in some ways easier to make that decision when you have already steady income as well. But there will be a worksheet in the toolkit that I will get digital copies to you all of, as well as try to get you all a physical copy mailed. That's going to be on page 8 and 9 of the toolkit that you can see referenced right here on the slide. And we're not going to have time for all of the activities tonight, but I want you all to take a look at this checklist and start to kind of just think through this checklist and think about some of the advantages that really resonate and speak to you when it relates to self-employment. And think of some of these challenges that you see on the slide. Which ones of these advantages, and feel free to come off of mute and just shout some out or post in the chat. But when you read through these potential advantages and the potential challenges of working for yourself, which ones really stand out to you as the most relevant to your lifestyle and where you are in your professional journey? Angie, I see you had your camera on. Go ahead and share.
I have to share becoming my own boss. That's an imperative for me at this stage in my life. So I've worked for corporations for over 20 plus years, mad skills, all of the necessary skills, technology, communication, writing, people connection. And I'm being laid off jobs, not because of errors or anything that I've done. It's just that um, I just don't fit in the culture. So it's unfortunate, but I could say it is what it is. I don't like it because to stay gainfully employed, I can keep a roof over my head. I lost my house because I'm laid off jobs. Nothing that I'm doing. So I'm just at the stage where I'm like, I gotta work for myself. And all of my friends, all of my professional friends say, go for it. You should do it. So it's the consistency for me.
Yep, and you've built the network, the skills, you have the experience. And like I say, I just typically, when I'm working with entrepreneurs like yourself, Angie, all I typically provide and help you through is creating the right structure and helping you order your steps so that you can maximize how you deliver those skills and provide that value to the world. So I think you're at a great place and a great place to make that decision to jump into small business ownership because you also understand you understand that you're not going to lose any responsibility when you go into owning your own business, but understand too that you're going to just shift certain responsibilities and you'll have more of that autonomy and that ability to utilize your skills in the way that you want to use them. Now, when we talk about all of these advantages, like being your own boss, defining your version of success, whether that be financially or even emotionally, hiring the people you choose, taking pride in what you provide to your community, there are some distinct challenges that I want to quickly harp on that come with self-employment opportunities. And one of those is the risk of failure. There is a very, very high percentage of small businesses that do not make it through the 1 year mark, maybe, and if they do, they may not make it 2 to 3 years. We see it all the time in our communities. So one of the things that's very, very helpful that we're going to dive into more is building a plan around your idea. So there are some challenges. You might make the wrong decisions. You don't get a lot of those traditional healthcare benefits and other parts of those benefit packages because you are wearing so many different hats as a business owner. You may work long hours. As a matter of fact, I can tell you, you probably are going to work longer hours for your own business. But
right.
A lot of times when you are passionate about your idea and have the right structure in place and understand how much it's going to cost you to make money and how much money feasibly can be made, I think it's still beneficial to sometimes take ownership of, to go into, to start your own business. But you do want to make sure that you're considering the time, energy, and commitment that it takes to really get a business off the ground. Thank you so much for sharing that, Angie. Karen, I see also that you mentioned here, setting your own hours, having flexibility. Yes, tired of the backstabbing and some of the ways of coworkers when you go beyond the call of duty. Yes, it can be very frustrating to continue to put so much into various organizations or corporations and not see your value being recognized or realized. So that is definitely all of some good potential advantages. Also, you want to think about your disposition for self-employment. People oftentimes ask me, I've helped hundreds of people get access to millions of dollars of capital for their small businesses, write business plans, help people register, create their, really flesh out their ideas. Why haven't you ever started your own business? But you definitely, and the reason why that is because I think there is a certain disposition and that you need to have to go into entrepreneurship. And you have to be very, very, you have to be comfortable with risk. If you are extremely risk adverse, that doesn't mean you can't go into entrepreneurship, but you want to really, really be practical and make practical considerations about how well your personality matches up with the demands of being self-employed, some of the levels of uncertainty that come at certain points of being your own boss. And there is another worksheet that will be in the toolkit that will kind of allow you to complete another checklist and really kind of think through some of the questions related to the personality of a typical successful entrepreneur. So are you comfortable sometimes having to make shifts to your daily routine? Are you a self-starter and self-motivated? Can you succeed sometimes without that constant praise or feedback from another individual? And so there are some things you want to consider about your disposition, your personality, and if there are challenges that you can see in some of these matches, that doesn't mean don't start the business. It means start to prepare for some of those challenges. And, there's no right or wrong way to go about, well, sometimes there is a wrong way, but typically there are many different ways that you can structure an idea to be successful, but it's more so about getting ahead of those potential challenges. So there are 4 major categories of self-employment, and one of those is a part-time side business. That's when you've done a hustle before to get some type of supplementary income or a second job. It's oftentimes when you don't necessarily quit your main job and lose your main source of income, but you may add additional side hustles or things that you're good at that you occasionally have made money from. So that's kind of that part-time side business. You also have freelance or contracting services. That is when, or oftentimes it's called gig work, or when you have received a 1099 or gotten contracted to do something over a period of time, either on an hourly basis or on a project basis. So even if, I remember growing up, I used to cut the grass for people in the neighborhood, and I even created a basic contract, which was one of my first forays into business way back when. And even back then, that was an example of freelance or contracting services, doing landscaping. So the question of what category of self-employment makes sense for you is one that's very, very individual, and it's based on a number of different factors. So what is your current financial situation, your current employment status, where you are in your life cycle, and what you expect to happen personally and even financially over the next few years, and your other obligations that you have will be what helps you consider which categories of self-employment are most attractive to you as an individual, an adult over 50. So the third type of self-employment opportunity is a micro business. And micro businesses are just any self-owned company that has 5 or fewer employees. So if there is let's say even some of our local restaurants that we might patronize, one of my favorite things to eat is sometimes Chinese food. So when I think about those restaurants, and oftentimes they only have a few employees, those restaurants could technically be considered micro businesses. So those businesses are businesses that typically hire, friends, family as employees, but they always will have 5 or fewer less employees. And then finally, you have the last category, which is always a very popular form of self-employment when it comes to startups. But I think it's often one of the categories with the highest level of misconception related to how you fund your social enterprise or nonprofit idea. But a social enterprise is a business that has goals not only of generating profits, but also of doing something good within the community that the business exists in as well. So these are just a few examples of the different categories of self-employment. And making the decision of starting a micro business or just starting your business as a part-time side hustle is a complex question that needs to be answered through processing and evaluating different ideas. Karen, you asked a great question here. Can a business be in category 1 and 2 together? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. So micro businesses don't necessarily have any standards on how often they're operated. A micro business could be a seasonal, let's say a micro business could be a limited liability company or an LLC that only doesn't have any employees, but it's only ran in the summertime when that person is off work on the weekends. So you can still be operating a micro business. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at 1 and 3. I apologize. Can 1 and 2 be combined? Yes, they also can be combined, because a part-time side business is just speaking to the frequency of how often you're operating that company. It doesn't have to be a formally registered business. It could be just you going out and making money from doing a certain task. So yes, you can be a freelancer that only operates part-time on a project basis, to also answer your question. But also, most of these can be combined as well in terms of the categories. So thank you for that. Very, very important before you start any business to think about and understand your goals. What are your reasons for starting this company? What do you value the most? And what are you going to value and prioritize on your journey through entrepreneurship? So really taking the time to think about what matters most to you. Is that being successful financially, being your own boss, spending time with your family? You really want to try to jot down, even in writing, on paper, and really think through what your priorities and goals are to you personally and professionally. And then start to think about how your potential business ideas, because you may not have an idea fleshed out yet, how these ideas of working for yourself can potentially help you achieve those goals. Oh, sorry, I went back a slide there. I'm going the wrong way. There we go. So yes, really thinking about your goals, what motivates you and drives you, to determine how self-employment is going to connect into your existing lifestyle and what's most important to you. Ultimately, only you are going to be able to decide what your goals are and how you're going to be able to achieve them, but having those written down, scoped out, is going to be helpful in you evaluating your various business ideas and opportunities for self-employment. Earl, you asked, are you going to cover how to use apps like Fiverr or Upwork? We won't cover that in this class, but I'm sure Eleanor might have some information about maybe some classes that talk through some online tools. I know that in the past, I've taught some classes on kind of using technology for your small business. But Earl, we can definitely set up time to talk about how to use those type of tools that allow you to solicit contractors for your business at a low cost, which is what Fiverr is. But we won't be diving into those tonight though, Earl. Thanks for the question. Things to keep in mind as you are evaluating your options for self-employment. You want to think about the money that you need to have for an entrepreneurship, for a small business. And when you're your own boss, you're responsible for all of your own benefits, your own taxes, and there are, when you're working for yourself, you're really going to be responsible for and need to likely set aside about 30% of what you make in order to cover those expenses that are usually covered by an employer. So if you think about, an AARP actually online has a free budget calculator, which can be helpful just for personal or even budgeting for your business idea. But rule of thumb is, if you are planning to make a sum, you need to set aside at least 30% of those earnings to pay for those typical expenses that your employer typically covers. So when you're thinking about self-employment and thinking about the money that you need to have set aside, you want to consider things like how much it's going to take you to really cover your expenses, how much work it will take for you to generate the income that you need, and how much time it's going to take you to comfortably earn that amount of money that you're going to need. So for example, Susan needs to earn at least, Susan needs to earn $30,000 a year to cover her basic expenses. So, excuse me, I am also recovering from COVID, you all, so I apologize about any coughs or sniffly noses. But how much does Susan need to really make a year in order to cover those additional expenses through her self-employment venture. And so if we take that 30% and add that on to that 30,000 there, she will need an additional $9,000 to account for expenses that are typically paid for by an employer, such as those healthcare costs and taxes. So based on what we've talked about so far, I hope that you all are starting to kind of think through some of the considerations of going into entrepreneurship and becoming self-employed. And there will be an additional activity in the workbook that kind of will help you kind of summarize everything in your thoughts and kind of walk through a checklist of making this determination as well. Let's dive into step 2. And step 2 or 3 are really my favorite parts of this this program and of this process, because they really allow you to kind of dig deeper and think through your idea and start to come up with a plan and the structure for your idea to be successful. So you've done your first gut check, you've learned and really thought through what entrepreneurship looks like for you, but now we can think about taking the next step, which is really focusing on pinpointing your areas of interest and what type of self-employment work you might pursue. So we talked a little bit about thinking through your strengths and weaknesses, but you want to really dive into your internal interest, your internal challenges or things that you don't like to do. Think about what you like, what you don't like, what you're really good at, and things that you need to work on. What you are creating here with answering these questions about yourself is something that we call in the business world a SWOT analysis. Has anyone heard of a SWOT analysis before? Okay, so a SWOT analysis, okay, Angie, I see you have. It's something that Fortune 500 companies use, nonprofits, solopreneurs, and all in between. And what a SWOT analysis is a analysis, and you can really set it up visually like a T-chart, okay? And on the top left of the T-chart, it will be your personal strengths or your business idea strengths or your competition strengths. So you can do different types of SWOT analysis, but for whatever you are evaluating, you're always going to be evaluating the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. And in this case, you want to kind of start off with doing a self-SWOT analysis. So what are your strengths, your weaknesses, or areas of opportunity to improve? What are the threats that you see out there to your goals and your dreams and your lifestyle? And what are those opportunities that you see as well? Be honest with yourself, because the more that you can determine now, the easier it will be to create the right supports around some of the things that you want to learn or those opportunities that you see as well. But for now, it's just kind of starting off with doing a self-SWOT analysis, and you can even take it a step further after you've done something like a SWOT and you kind of thought through where you may see potential areas of alignment with a business and your personal skills and interests, to go ahead and really take a deeper look at what you've evaluated about yourself. So look at your likes, the things that you are good at. Excuse me. What ideas stand out to you that suggest that they could be opportunities for self-employment? So for example, if one of your biggest interests is gardening, would you be good at working part-time at a florist as a consultant, as a contractor? Or would you be better off starting a small landscaping business? If people tell you your baked goods are, off the chain and they're really, really good, maybe is that an opportunity for you to consider selling them? Try to even identify what your top likes are and really hone in on the interest that you have that could be related to self-employment. Then also look at your dislikes, the things you need to work harder on to get better at. And I think working for yourself is always going to give you an opportunity sometimes to try to avoid what you don't like. But in the same token, I will say, be careful with just continuing to avoid the aspects of entrepreneurship that you don't like, because oftentimes those things are the things that slip through the cracks and are still important components of you operating a business. So once you've put everything together and based on your likes, your dislikes, things you're good at, things you need to work on, you can try to identify a few different self-employment opportunities that may be a good match for you. So if you enjoy travel and one of your strengths is actually working with people and bringing people together, you could think about what it may look like to become a travel agent or a tour guide. You don't have to have a million ideas to get started. You want to kind of, instead of that, begin with a few that you want to explore. And I see a question here from Paula. Please feel free to keep the questions coming as we kind of try to quickly move through a bunch of information. Is the SWOT used, is the SWOT more so used as a tool for the company you want to create? Paula, that's a great question. And I always recommend starting off by doing a personal SWOT. And then, yes, you definitely are going to want to do a SWOT analysis for the company you want to create. So once you have gotten past the idea phase, you want to do a SWOT analysis for that idea. What are the strengths of this idea that you can see? What are the potential weaknesses of this idea? What are the threats to this idea? What are the opportunities that this idea might have in the future? So yes, thank you, Angie. Yes, you will definitely continue to use SWOT both personally and professionally. Thank you, Angie. Prioritizing your goals. Whew, this is a tough one for me personally. You know, there's so many goals, so many interests. Which one do we want to lean into? Which one do we want to make our idea? Which one do we want to prioritize? And Angie, I can share a visual of the SWOT here in just a moment. I can Google and pull up one. I don't have one handy, but I can show you all an example here towards the end of class for sure. Because the SWOT analysis is a tool that you will continue to be able to use as you develop your business idea as well. But how do you prioritize your goals and ideas? A lot of times the challenge with self-employment is not all about just finding the best idea, but it's more so about narrowing your options down and really being able to evaluate the ideas that you have. So which idea excites you the most? Which one is going to be the easiest idea for you to get started or the cheapest? Which one may be the hardest or most expensive? Which one's really going to support your current lifestyle and why? So these are some questions to kind of help you prioritize your goals and ideas. And this is something that I would love to also do follow-up on. And I think there are a lot of different tools and visual aids we can use to kind of evaluate your ideas for your business as well. If you all wouldn't mind sharing with me via the chat or quickly coming off mute, at this point in time, I'm very, very interested to hear if there are any ideas that you all have already. I know we've shared a few of those in our introductions, but feel free to type in the chat what your business idea is or what ideas you may have related to your businesses right now. And Angie, I see you came off mute. Did you want to share?
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, I do. Currently, I'm working on a business plan, putting it together from start to finish on a coffee house. I've had some entrepreneur efforts over the years, event planning, resume writing. I'm a certified professional resume writer, business consulting, doing business plans, have worked as 1099 previously. So my next venture is to put together a coffee plan and really sink my teeth into it, or these working hands into it, and stop going to work for other people because it's not working. I just keep going back to the same thing. Do the coffee house, bring the community together, connect the people together, and grow it to make money.
Well, let
and
me
to
tell
sustain
you,
myself.
I'm a personal fan of the idea because personally, and you know, no matter where you're going to put it, I'll come visit you wherever you go. I would love one in North City, North County, as I live in North City, and I'm frankly so tired of being, 15, 20 minutes away from my local coffee house that I like to patronize. So the more coffee houses, the better, because we know what a coffee house also can mean for communities. They're spaces for community. They are spaces for people, for safety, for learning, even in some cases.
Correct.
So I'm excited to hear about that idea, and I would love to talk more about it. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Carlotta, I see teaching, coaching, and counseling. You know, I knew you had all that wisdom. I could just tell by when I looked at you. And so I think that a lot right now, we are in a gig-based economy, which you all will continue to hear that term being thrown around. And I think that that leads us to it being a beneficial or a attractive time to start a business. People are very interested in paying for services, paying to better our lives, paying to access certain things. And so if you have a service-based company that you can really develop, I think there's a large opportunity there. And Stephanie, you're interested in teaching adult reading as a ministry. That is one of those things where it may be beneficial to explore the different types of small business legal structures and consider where you would try to seek funding from. Is that best set up as a 501c3, as a nonprofit, a social enterprise, or as a for-profit business? So that would be something I would love to talk about separately as well, Stephanie. What I have on the screen really quickly, and I'll just zoom in, it's just a quick example of how a SWOT analysis is set up. So it's kind of in these 4 squares. You have your strengths and weaknesses at the top, opportunities and threats. Keep in mind the strengths and weaknesses are those internal things that you typically have direct control over, and those opportunities and threats are those external factors that will impact your potential idea. Can you all see the presentation again? Cool. So once you put it all together and you have thought through your different ideas, your strengths, how these different ideas will intersect and with your existing lifestyle, you've narrowed everything down. This is the time where you really bring it all together to try to figure out what your big idea is. And we don't have enough time to jump into some of the exercises, but within your toolkit that I'm going to make sure you all get digital copies of, there will be some exercises to kind of walk you through narrowing down these different ideas into one big idea. And I'll make sure that in my follow-up email that you all will also get a copy of the presentation so that you all will be able to come back to your digital toolkit and work through the exercises that you see referenced within the presentation as well. So make a plan. This is my favorite part of developing a new idea for a company. And as you work through your idea, it's important to understand what you're going to need to be successful. What do entrepreneurs need? And there's information that's come out from the Association of Enterprise Opportunity, which is an association that helps entrepreneurs start businesses. And they've identified 4 key elements that micro businesses need to be successful: capacity, confidence, capital, and connections. These are the various elements that can really help you support your success no matter what type of self-employment venture you decide to pursue. And so when we think about capacity, we mean the capacity to grow your business. You all are already, right now, even before making the decision of going into self-employment, already building your capacity by attending these types of training events and learning more about the different components and aspects of small business ownership. You want to have confidence. You want to feel prepared and optimistic about your chance of success. And the more robust plan that you build related to your idea, the easier or the more optimistic you will feel about going out and starting that company. You want to have capital, access to funding you need, whether that be micro lending, whether that be, other financial or capital tools. But really, it's all about having the money that you need to make self-employment successful for you in your life. And you also want to continue to build valuable connections. Everyone in the class, I think today, is a valuable connection. Of course, I like to think I'm a valuable connection, but I'm really all about just supporting you all as entrepreneurs. So my value is being connected to folks like you all, but you really want to build a network of support and know who to turn to when you're thinking about building your client base, when you're thinking about accessing funding, which, as Angie just stated in the chat, access to capital is king. But let me tell you, Angie, I've been the director of investments at a nonprofit where I actually deploy capital to Black and Latinx entrepreneurs and manage and lead an investment fund. Let me tell you what I'm finding is almost more important than access to capital for us is capital preparedness. Getting the access is one thing. How prepared are we to then sustain that capital injection too, Angie? But yes, access is always going to be something that is so critical. But these are just a few things that I think are important for you to think about, and important elements to consider when you are thinking about how to really get into entrepreneurship successfully. And they actually did have an example of a SWOT analysis here. And so this will be in the copy of the presentation that you all received. And this, yes, intentional planning, yes. This is kind of some good trigger questions as you start to do a SWOT analysis for your business idea, which I remember someone asked about here earlier, Paula. So you asked about using that SWOT as a tool for the company you were thinking about creating. These questions are kind of good ones to kind of fill in your SWOT analysis for you. And going back, Barbara, I want to make sure I didn't miss your chat. You come to love making gift baskets and hoping that this will be a reality as a small business. Let me tell you, I just helped a company get funding where their whole business model, Barbara, was doing corporate gifting and creating corporate gift packages for local small businesses here in St. Louis. And they've developed or see a market for that. So there is opportunity for a gift making type of business. And Daryl's an artist, so we love artists. Artists have a very complex brain sometimes that is always interesting to work with. So just want to make sure that I caught your chat there. But here's a SWOT analysis example that you all will be able to use. Business planning. Believe it or not, one of my favorite things to do is write a business plan still to this day. And Eleanor's laughing, but she knows it's the truth. And it's at this point in the game, you've evaluated and narrowed down your ideas. You have maybe one idea that you are thinking about moving forward with. And we're not going to be able to dive into all of the components of a business plan and marketing plans within this workshop, but I want you all to understand what a business plan is. And a business plan is a living, breathing document that really will continue to grow with you as you continue to develop your company and start your business, that lays out all of the technical aspects of how your business is going to be successful. The entire goal of the business plan is to not sell your business idea, to not say how it could be successful, but to realistically, in technical terms, describe how your business is going to be successful and why. And so some of the different components of a business plan include overviews of the industry, a plan on how you're going to market your idea, how you're going to get the capital you need, understanding how much money you need to facilitate and fund your idea, a budget, a 5-year strategy or a 5-year plan, an operating plan, how the operations of your company are going to go on a day-to-day basis, and even in things like a SWOT analysis. Now, a marketing plans are typically going to be layered within a business plan as well, but a marketing plan is that very, very specific plan for how you're going to communicate your product or your service's value to your potential customers or clients. So your marketing plan not only includes how you're going to brand your product or service, like the logo, the font, but it also includes things like how you're going to price it. Pricing is a part of marketing. And don't think that you always have to come in as the lowest price competitor, but that's a topic for another workshop as well. But the marketing plan will include information about your competition, how you're going to distribute your product or service, what different success strategies you're going to really hone in and lock in on as you go out and start to try to promote and sell your product or service. So these two documents are, and especially if you're going out and trying to seek traditional capital, these two documents are going to be the ones that you need to really structure your idea. Now, capital, we know that our business ideas need money. oftentimes to get started. And creating a business plan a lot of times can also be one of the first steps to help you secure funding. Where can this funding come from? Oftentimes we start off businesses with personal investments from our personal funds. Please, excuse me, if you are getting funds from your friends and family, we love our friends and family. They're oftentimes the first people to believe in our ideas, but we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, our business ideas, and our friends and family members by setting up formal written agreements when we are trying to receive funds to start our businesses. And that just protects everyone involved, especially if your business does so well, it kicks off and you're making, so much money. You want to have those things set up on the front end versus waiting till you have to get those type of written documents set up. You also have loans. Loans can come from a multitude of different sources. You have micro lending. You have micro lending. You have federally guaranteed funds. You have private loans. Outside of that, you also have equity investors, angel investors. You have crowdfunding sources. Crowdsourcing is when you try to get people to invest in your idea, and they may get either a return as a product or they may get various types of returns where they get access to the first copy of your product, or they may get access and even to become a part owner of your company. But there are a lot of different ways to finance your small business, but oftentimes people think that financing is the largest barrier to getting started, and sometimes it can be, but it's very important to remember that 80% of startups really typically never need external funding to get started. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to need funding to scale your efforts to support maybe 5 kids versus 30, but especially because a lot of the businesses that we're starting are service-based companies, there are ways to mitigate and try to reduce your cost of starting your business that may make your business more sustainable in the long run as well. But I find oftentimes people want to start off so fast and expand so quickly, but my best practice and my advice is to start off slow and steady, develop your systems and processes before you try to expand too quickly. And someone mentioned here being a government contractor. Being a government contractor is another one of those things that has a lot of common misconceptions. Most of the business owners that I work with that were making anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million in revenue that were government contractors. A large percentage of those businesses were not necessarily making a lot of their money through their government contracting work. What I will say about government contracting work is that it is very, very beneficial to be a government contractor if you have the cash flow to prepare yourself to take a government contract. Government contracts are typically the slowest to pay. You're looking at sometimes 90 days before you are paid. And so when you are supporting payroll of a construction company, you want to make sure that you're able to sustain the wait period for some of these government contracts. But I could go on and on about contracting as well, but it is always a good opportunity to become a government contractor. Barbara, I see you have a quick question. Are there grants for starting a small business? Yes, there are, but you want to be very careful with trying to focus on using grants as the sole way of financing a for-profit business. Most oftentimes grants are for a philanthropic purpose. They're for a very precise or exact purpose. And oftentimes, in my experience, for-profit companies are not able to get all of the startup funding they need to start their companies through grants. But that doesn't mean that they aren't out there. I just say, from my experience, grants are not typically how for-profit companies are funded. Now, if you're a nonprofit, then that is really your main source of funding is through grants and fundraising. But if you are starting a for-profit company, usually grants maybe could get you a little bit of the working capital you need, but they're not going to kind of really spearhead your business start typically, Barbara. Great question. We are wrapping up here, and I think we might go just a few minutes over, Eleanor. I know it's already late in the evening, so I won't take up too much of our time past 7 p.m., but we're kind of jumping into what are some of these challenges that you want to potentially get ahead of, and how to kind of protect yourselves if you all do decide to become self-employed. And it's important to really finance your self-employment in a way that won't jeopardize anything about your finances and financial future. And we never recommend to use retirement savings or credit cards to fund your self-employment journey. It is very challenging and difficult sometimes for self-employed individuals or micro business owners to receive loans and equity financing, but there are a bunch of organizations that I can share with you all that focus on providing seed money for these micro businesses that are started by women, minorities, for older adults as well. And also there will be a resources section in the toolkit that I will share with you that will also kind of provide you some information on places that specifically provide these services as well. So watching out for trouble, we're going to go through this very quickly because I think one thing that AARP Foundation tends to believe, they want to make sure people are protected, but I have a high sense of faith in you all and understanding some of the scams that are out there. But there are a bunch of different scams going on right now. The scams are getting more and more complex. Make sure that if you are using, I think Earl or someone mentioned using services like Fiverr and websites to get quick hired help that are contractors. You want to make sure that if you are utilizing those types of contractors for your labor, for your business idea, that you're vetting who you are working with, making sure that you're getting recommendations, that you're not putting up money up front. And they have a work from home scam up here, but I think what's more common right now are these online scams where you see people offering services. They will design your website. You will get 20 customers in 24 hours. Please, 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 before you decide to pay for some of these online services, be very, very wary of these things and make sure that you are vetting these resources before you sign up and pay for things, especially over the internet. We know about the tax scams going on. I don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but I think generally speaking for this section, I will just sum it up and say that people prey on entrepreneurs. There is a segment of scammers that understand how hard it is to start your own business and will prey on that and prey on your passion for your idea, and make sure that you are heavily vetting all services that you use before paying. Also, taxes. Taxes don't necessarily have to get that complex when you start working for yourself, but you do want to make sure that you keep careful records of your income and your expenses. You will have to pay income tax on income that you make through your business, but usually, unless you're a corporation, it's taxed at your personal rate. There is self-employment tax to cover Social Security and Medicaid costs. If you do sell a tangible product here in the state of Missouri, you do have to pay and collect sales tax for the state of Missouri. That is also something I can walk you all through registering and getting set up, is your Missouri tax ID number. And so all in all, when you start getting more into your business journey, you want to make sure you're keeping strict records as much as possible so that it's easy for tax reporting and accounting purposes as well. And AARP has some services here that they highlight within the toolkit as well that you can access online to try to get help with taxes. And then finally, we're wrapping up step 5, how to find support. The toolkit has a bunch of resources and support within it, but that's kind of more on a national level. But I think it's very important to not try to work through your business idea in a silo. This is where I always like to plug in Eleanor and her amazing team at the library there. They have a great system to kind of help support sometimes with market research, understanding. They even have business planning tools as well. And I can kind of let her speak to that really quickly in just a minute or so here as well, if she wants to share more about those library services. But please utilize your library as a resource, because a lot of these resources that you will find do have certain costs that come with them, and the resources that they have available and the technical support is at no additional cost to you. So please utilize their market research support and their various network of support that they have. So you're not alone in your pursuit of, There are organizations, folks out there like myself that would love to continue to talk to you more about your business idea. And please continue to network. Networking can be very powerful. You never know who you're going to meet. Get information. Use each networking opportunity as an opportunity to learn more, ask questions about your potential idea. Also, make sure if you have an idea for a business, start to integrate into the various communities that your business is looking to serve. Okay, so if you're thinking about starting a local flower shop or an online flower delivery business, start to go out and get out with some of those florists or those floral communities here in St. Louis and try to integrate yourself so that way your business will then be more integrated once it starts as well. These are a bunch of different tools that are out there. We're not going to be able to dive into all of the technology. I saw someone ask a question about some of this technology as well, but their technology is really a part of every small business at this point in some capacity. So there are a lot of different tools that you can explore to help you simplify and streamline your business for record keeping, accounting, customer management, and so many different things to reach your customers and to keep up with your tracking of your financials. And so as a follow-up to, if we do sit down and sit down for some counseling, I can share more about which tools may make sense and be helpful as you are starting to develop your business idea as well. So taking action. You've gotten a lot of context, a lot of information this evening. Once you also get a copy of that digital toolkit, you'll have some great exercises and next steps for you to start to think through as you are thinking through self-employment for yourself. Here's some additional online resources that AARP Foundation also has vetted to support Encore entrepreneurs like yourselves. Please feel free to connect with me. I will make sure I share my contact information in the chat here and reach out to you all to kind of share this copy of the slide, and we can chat more about some of these national and more specific than national, the local resources that we have out there to support. And there is a survey as I wrap up here and allow you all to just take a couple minutes for questions. There is a survey that you can access by going to this link for you to let AARP Foundation know how you felt about the workshop today. We want to be able to continue providing free events like this to the community. So getting that feedback from you all will be great for us to continue to have these type of events. And I will turn it back over to Eleanor to wrap us up. And then please feel free to come off of mute with any questions or type the questions in the chat as well.
Yes, thank you, Amina, for that wonderful presentation. I always learn so much when we host these programs. I don't think I'm going to be starting a side hustle anytime soon. I really love that structure of working for an organization. But now I feel like I know where I would start. And one of the things I like to do is connect people with the information and resources that'll help them. So whether that's a tool for creating a business plan that'll walk you through it a little bit, you don't have to start completely from scratch, or some of the tools to conduct some market research, or sometimes it's connecting people with some of our community partners like Amina, who can help you do things that maybe aren't in my wheelhouse. So I love doing that. If you're here, you've gotten an email from me, so you've got my email, all my contact information, and please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. I will answer the one question I see in the chat from Barbara. Okay, did you say that it was possible to start with minimum funds to start a business? It is possible to start with to start, some businesses do not necessarily need a lot of capital to get started, Barbara, is essentially the point that I was trying to make. Not necessarily that you need minimum funding, but that you can start a business. You don't necessarily have to have the funding that you need to scale the business to 100% to get started with your idea, if that makes sense as well. And I'm typing my email address here in the chat. Please reach out to me. I hopefully will be in contact with you all to send you all those resources, the presentation, and the toolkit. But separately than that, this is my contact info. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to connect with each one of you. And thank you all so much for joining.